Hey there, this is Ross Izzard, and this is the Backcountry Fly Fishing Podcast, where we talk about fly fishing and how to trust your gut when you're fly fishing. So you've been listening to me talk quite a bit over the course of this season, which it seems like most of you have enjoyed, so I guess maybe that's not a bad thing. But as anybody who's been listening for a while knows, eventually even the most stalwart souls get sick of hearing only my voice. And then we pivot to interviews. So typically the back half of each season, we pivot to a series of interviews with folks who might be in the industry or might be on the science side, or at least are coming to us with something that is a valuable lesson that we can take with us into the backcountry when we are doing this crazy backcountry fly fishing thing. And this week we have a really interesting guest in the form of James Hamilton. James is the founder of Hamilton Security, which is, as the name might imply, a security firm that specializes in protecting high net worth or high-profile individuals, as well as security systems and security operations, and just making sure that people and places are safe. He's a former FBI agent. He's been working in this field for a really, really long time. He does not fly fish. He has nothing to do with fly fishing, but that's okay, because that's not why we're talking to James. We are talking to James so that we can learn more about our intuition and that gut feeling that you get sometimes out there in the woods that something just ain't quite right, or even in the city for that matter. But hey, we're here to talk about the woods, so we'll try to keep the focus there. James worked for a lot of years with a guy named Gavin DeBecker. Gavin DeBecker wrote a book, I don't know, probably 30 years ago or something close to that, called The Gift of Fear, which is all about learning to listen to that little quiet voice, which a lot of us call fear, but really is your intuition, your ability to subconsciously pick up on cues and clues that let you know that you might be in trouble. There's something going on that you need to pay attention to. There's a lot of serious experiential work behind this theory, a fair amount of science behind it, and also just anecdotally, you know it, right? This is kind of like the you know it when you see it. We've all had times where something just feels off, like you've been impending sense of doom, or you feel like you're being watched, or you feel suddenly unsafe. It's an interesting thing because you usually can't articulate it, and your instinct, because you can't articulate it, is often just to be like, well, it's probably not real, so I should just ignore it and keep going. But actually, that's not always the case, right? So just like we talked about earlier in the season with the mountain saying no, sometimes that intuition is really saying something that you need to hear and that you need to listen to. And this episode and this interview is all about learning about that intuition, why it matters, and how you can use it to keep you safe and well in the backcountry while you're fly fishing. So with all that said, I'm going to go ahead and stop talking, and we will go ahead and jump in with Mr. Hamilton. So our guest today is James Hamilton. He is the founder of Hamilton Security Group, which might seem like an odd guest to have on a podcast about backcountry fly fishing, but I think James has some really interesting things to say about the power of intuition and how you can trust your gut to stay safe in the wilderness. So James, thanks for joining us.
Hey man, thanks for having me.
You bet. I wonder if maybe you could start by just telling us a bit about yourself. So your company, your background, and how you got into this field.
I run a training and consultation company, specifically on one area. It's very niche. It's protection of executives, protection of yourself. So when you hear the fancy term of executive protection or close protection or bodyguards, I'm a consultant and a trainer in that space. And I'm also a consultant and trainer to individuals on how to keep themselves safe just from, random violence that happens in our society. I've been doing it for 33 years professionally, if you will. I started at 22 as a deputy sheriff in South Carolina. Then I was recruited to the FBI and was an FBI agent for 18 years. During those 18 years, it was, I was very specific about what I was going to do. I was very intentional. I got involved in the SWAT program. I got involved in close protection. I actually was on a protective detail for 4 years. And then I went down to Hogan's Alley as a tactical instructor to new agents, teaching them how to keep themselves safe. And then I ran the FBI's Overseas Survival Program, which was highly focused on the use of intuition, in a book called The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker. And kind of tangent to that, I created the FBI's Close Protection School to train all FBI agents who are doing any type of close protection work. And that expanded to the 3-letter agencies that were not Secret Service. So ATF, DEA, U.S. Marshals, CIA. I trained all of them. And then in 2015, I was recruited by Gavin DeBecker himself to join his firm, close protection firm called Gavin DeBecker and Associates. They protect top 1%ers. That's really all I can say. But for 10 years, I was a senior vice president. I ran all training, operations, internal reviews, and public engagements like this one, talking about keeping yourself safe, using intuition. And in 2015, I started my own company just to kind of do the types of things I want to be doing. And yeah, that's kind of me.
Awesome. So do you work all over the country now, or do you have a specific region?
Yeah, I flew in actually I was in Idaho yesterday giving a speech on this very topic to a room of about 300 people. And I travel all over the country talking about personal security. How do I use intuition and other things to protect myself? And it's an uphill battle. Your listeners, and we'll talk about it, but your listeners are far more prepared for something than folks who are just kind of living a domesticated life.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about The Gift of Fear, if you don't mind. I actually ran across that book, gosh, I don't know, probably 3 years ago, and picked it up and read it. And it's an older book at this stage. I think it was published in the 90s, if I remember correctly. But it's got some incredible lessons in it about how to stay safe. And a lot of it is focused on staying safe in like an urban environment. So, women walking home alone on a dark street or answering your front door, things like that. But DeBecker had a lot of really interesting things to say about sort of trusting your gut and the power of intuition, which is, I know we're going to get into it here in a minute, but it kind of changed my entire thinking about the way that I view life in general, but especially stuff in the backcountry where you're out there. I'm usually alone in the middle of nowhere, sometimes pretty far off trail. And every now and then you just get a bad feeling. And it can be tempting to kind of wave that off and say, you're just, you're being a wimp, carry on, it'll be fine. But DeBecker's book really kind of changed my thinking about how you interpret those signals, how you listen to them, and how they can ultimately keep you kind of safe. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I've talked about it before, but I do want to tell a quick story. A couple years ago, I was hiking up to a lake at about 12,000 feet in a cirque that nobody's ever heard of, probably 6 miles off trail. So a bunch of navigation, you're going straight up a hill to get there. And before you get to the lake that I was heading to fish, you have to pass by a series of other lakes that were left by the glacier that used to be in that particular basin. And I was walking by one of these lakes. Everything was fine. The camping was fine. The hiking was fine. And then I walked by one of these small glacial lakes, and I had this just overpowering sense that something was wrong. I couldn't really see very well. There was brush all around me. We're way up over tree line at this point at a place where I would not expect necessarily to have predators or even other people, especially that far off trail. But it was this sort of overwhelming sense of something is not right. So that day I kind of pushed past it real quickly, got to the lake, fished, I came back down. I had the same feeling passing by that area on the way back down. And then I was like, well, I got to go back. I had this in my head that I needed to go back and face my fear or whatever cliche you want to attach to that. And I tried 3 times. And all 3 times the night before I went, I could not sleep. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I was just so restless that I didn't wind up going any of the 3. It's like my mind would just not let me. And it was a wild experience. It's not the only time I've had an experience like that, but it was probably the most noteworthy and the most powerful. And when you lay that over with DeBecker's book about intuition and the gift of fear, it becomes a pretty interesting conversation. So I wonder if maybe you could talk a little bit about sort of the central concepts of that book and your career and what this intuition thing is. What is that weird feeling that we get?
Yeah, I was really fortunate to meet a lot of really good people in my life and be mentored by some, and he was one of my mentors, and I'm very fortunate for that. And so I talked to him 1,000 times, and so I'm going to try to briefly explain kind of what he's talking about and what that book is all about. And so the very first thing is the reason he calls it a gift is because it's your body's way of dumping everything and telling you it's time to listen to me. He doesn't call it the gift of concern or the gift of curiosity or the gift of suspicion. He calls it the gift of fear. And fear has a way of, like real fear, primal fear, has a way of stopping everything. And you are entirely focused on that thing in front of you. And it's a gift if you use it appropriately. And the book is really about what we call messengers of intuition: curiosity, suspicion, dark humor. Those are all messengers. You're not there yet, but you're getting there. The gift of fear is when the two-legged threat, and that's what it is, it's humans who want to hurt you, they present themselves and everything stops and you have to do something. Unfortunately, what happens in our culture is we tell people to not listen to it. We tell people to not be judgmental. We tell people to don't profile. We tell people to don't hurt people's feelings. The reason that book, I mean, there's a lot of reasons that book is so popular, but I believe one of the reasons it's so popular is the way in which Gavin speaks. Gavin speaks in a way that we all want to speak. It's truth, it's clear, it's commonsensical. It pushes against some of this nonsense that we find in culture. Um, Intuition is not about profiling, and it's not about race. It's about your body saying, and I had to look this up, Ross, because I'm one of those instructors or trainers that, when you ask me a question, I don't get butthurt about it, right? I don't know if you've ever been to a class like that where you've seen an instructor get all butthurt because somebody asked them a question. And the reason that instructor is getting that way is because they're insecure. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. So for me, when someone asks me a question that I don't know the answer to, I embrace it. Like, why? Because it's uncomfortable, but I embrace it because I want to learn. And so this guy asked me, he said, "Hey, is there a scientific explanation for intuition other than, okay, we define it as knowing without knowing why?" That's how Gavin defines intuition. It's knowing something without knowing why. And it always has, your best interest at heart, and you've had it your entire life. Okay. So that's how he defines it. But what I read was that in essence, intuition is it's decision making. Your brain is operating at a subconscious level faster than a computer. And what's happening with intuition is it's remembering all of these experiences that you've had over your course of your life, things you've read about and things you've experienced. And it's taking what you're seeing, feeling, sensing, and it's telling you to make a decision, or it's telling you to be concerned. It happens so quickly, we can't even explain it. Okay. But what happens, maybe not with your listeners, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but what I know with my clients is they override it. They say, "I don't want to be that way. I'm supposed to be nice." And then what happens is they deny it, and then they find themselves in a situation that was fully avoidable, and now they got to do something. And a lot of times it doesn't work out well. And the reason I keep saying your people is because if you are going to, whatever you just said about hiking something 12 miles, which is crazy, by the way, when you guys go out there, you're prepared. Okay. So you plan it. Like, I'm sure you did a map study. I'm sure you took appropriate kit, clothing, water, food, comm device, maybe a weapon, right? Like, I mean, a tool that can be used as a weapon. Your brain is the ultimate weapon, period. But you probably have some pistol, knife, samurai sword, whatever. But your people are prepared. Okay. When people go to Target, they don't prepare. Okay. They don't prepare when they go to Publix. Why? Because they think, "Oh, I'm always going to be safe." Well, you're not. Okay. And I've been taught from my father, and I'll tell you and your listeners, the mission has always been your safety. The task is everything else. So when you go to Target, that's a task. The mission is your safety. So the point is that your folks are paying attention and they're preparing. Why? Because some things happen out there. Well, the same things happen in the city. The same things happen in, okay, a good example. Your people, I promise you, probably don't screw in earbuds and bury down into this phone when they're out in the backcountry, right? Why? Because there's things out there that will kill you, right? Well, the exact same thing exists at Target. But yet our people are buried in these phones and they have these things in their ears because they think nothing bad is going to happen to them. They think monsters are roaming around because the media has told them that they're monsters. They're not. They're human beings who want to take from you. They want to hurt you. They want to rob from you. Why? Well, a lot of reasons. But I think your people are far more prepared. Now, certainly, if you've spent a lot of time out there in the backcountry, you have a lot more experience. And if you want to get into the OODA loop, Colonel John Boyd's OODA loop, we can. That's observe, orient, decide, act, which is the decision-making process to keep yourself safe. But the people that have been in the backcountry a long time know more than like I would know. So they might have a higher degree of intuitive, response mechanisms and belief system or decision making than I do because I don't understand what that noise is because I haven't been out there that much. So they have an advantage over me. But man, I would tell you, your folks are far more. Hopefully, they're doing the same amount of preparation when they go out into the world to their kids' soccer game as they're doing when they go in the backcountry. But I doubt they are.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I think, one of the interesting things is that you can go out there fully prepared. And I have all the stuff that you mentioned, right? So all the safety kit, I do carry a weapon when I'm out there, all of that kind of stuff. And we talk a lot about that here. But what's interesting is that nature doesn't care about you, right? And it doesn't care what you're carrying. It doesn't care what you have with you. It doesn't care if it's your 10th trip or your 10,000th trip out there. Stuff can happen. I mean, it can be a predator. It can be weather related. It can be landscape related. It can be a fire. I mean, there are a million things that could happen. And you said something really important there, which is that we get trained societally to ignore that. When you go out, and especially men, I mean, let's be honest, like when men are doing this stuff, there is a culture of machismo involved in this that's like, hey, don't be a, push past it, go do your thing. And I can fall victim to that, right? I mean, we're all big, rugged dudes that are playing around out in the woods for fun. And you can that little voice comes up and everything goes still in the forest. And you think, man, this just isn't right. And you do have, even now, I still have the initial reaction of like, hey, pull yourself together and just get past it. And learning not to do that. And I do want to talk about the OODA loop here in just a second, but learning not to do that, learning to feel those things and take them for what they are, which is the signal from your brain that there is some pattern in front of you that it's recognizing that even if you don't consciously see it is going on, and then acting accordingly could save your life. I mean, most of the people you hear about that die, maybe it's in Target, maybe it's at, the park, maybe it's miles off in the backcountry. If you trace it back, there was some decision point most of the time that had that been different, things would have looked different. And that's not to say that it's always the victim's fault. I don't mean to throw it out there that way, but most of the time when you hear about hikers or backpackers or anglers or somebody who's had something terrible happen to them in the forest or in the mountains, it didn't have to happen. And if they had just stopped to listen to that voice, it would have been different. So maybe you could talk a bit about, what that voice feels like. And then when you hear it, what is that process? How do you start making a better choice?
It starts, I would say, rapidly in that, if you are letting your senses work, okay, that's a huge if. Okay, if you are actually listening because you hear it before you see it, you can listen and feel curiosity and suspicion about a human in your space. There's something about him. Usually it's a him. Statistically, it's a him, but women do things. But statistically, it's men that are offenders. But there's something about him that draws your curiosity. Maybe it's the way he's dressed. Maybe it's his mannerisms. Maybe it's body language. Maybe it's just, collective mood as everyone's happy and this guy's pissed off. I mean, I can go on and on about examples of that very thing. But these are what we call pre-incident indicators. You're seeing them. They're like breadcrumbs, if you will. They're leading you down a trail. But then all of a sudden, it happens. The weapon comes out or, there's a movement that's inconsistent with what is natural for your environment. That's like lifting a T-shirt, going for an independent carry pistol, for instance. As soon as that happens, intuitively, you're like, shoo, everything stops. And it's telling you, get out now, go at it now. That's it. That's what happens. The reason you can't, the reason they call it a gut feeling is because you can't eat. If you ever notice this, if you're ever terrified or you get an adrenaline dump, you cannot eat in the moment. It's in your gut. That's what they're talking about. Basically, everything's stopped. Okay. And the good thing about it is, your body's going to do a lot of things that are going to help you in the moment. But intuitively, that's what's happening. Is you're putting all these things together, and then bam, like, oh shit, I got to do something. Yeah, and that's what, I've had it happen, and I've listened to my intuition, and it's been very successful. Meaning, um, I listened to that feeling I had, and I either disassociated or went at the thing, and it saved me. But unfortunately, if we drown it out or we don't, give it its due, we can get ourselves in a real bad way real quick, and then you're way behind, right? What I mean by that is, you can buy time by being aware and being prepared, and then you can waste time when your intuition is triggered over an individual in your space, and then you are start to waste time in what I call the Dr. Phil approach to tactics, which is you psychoanalyze what's happening. You start saying, why is this guy doing this thing? I thought they were monsters or madmen or the face of evil, as the press likes to call people. They're not. They're not any of those things. They're human beings who've done some crazy stuff. But right now they're in your space, and you're going to have to do something about it. And that's where it kind of all just breaks down, right? I mean, to take your listeners again as another example. When you're out there, good luck calling 911. Good luck with that, right? No one's coming to help you, man. And you all kind of know that going into it. Now, they might get there eventually, but you kind of know you got to triage a little bit, right? Well, it's the exact same thing out at Target. But we have been conditioned, in this country especially, since birth, to call 911 when you're in trouble. It's literally subcontracting our own security to the police department. That's what we've done. I'm not saying they did it intentionally, but I'm telling you that's the reality. So people think, oh, I'm going to call 911 when this guy's standing in front of me with a knife to my throat. Well, you're not. It's not going to be very effective. They're not going to be able to get there fast enough. You're going to have to triage yourself for a while. We don't talk like that. I don't know if you ever heard a public service announcement that says that. The only public service announcement we have in my space is run, hide, fight, right? That's what we have from the government. Well, guess what, Ross? It's expecting that the human listening can do two things, that they can actually run and fight. I know a lot of humans who can't run. They are not capable of running. They can't, right? That's just a fact. And they're behind it. They're way behind it, right? And when they meet that guy, it's gonna be bad. They're gonna lose, And I've seen it. I mean, I've had friends in law enforcement killed. Why? Because someone was better than they were in this world of violence. They were better. That's just how it is. Good guys don't always win.
No, that's right. And I mean, what you're saying there, first of all, for being prepared is a good thing. So I'll put in a quick plug for my other hobby, which is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, for exactly this reason. And I love it. Although I also know that I'd rather not have to ever use it. And the same goes for all the stuff that you carry in the backcountry, right? I mean, you want to avoid the situation where that could even come up if you can. But let's say that you're walking around, you're off in the forest. The point that you made is a great one, which is that nobody's coming to get you, right? So just like you can't necessarily call 911 in an emergency at Target, it's going to take them, I don't know, maybe if you're lucky, 2 minutes to get there, which is far too long, maybe 10, and then you're really in trouble. In the backcountry, it's hours or maybe days, right? So like that lake that I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast there's no way anybody was getting to me except in a helicopter unless they were going to take a whole day, right? Which means that if something happens, it's just you or you and whoever you're with. But that's a whole nother thing, because when you have somebody with you, you're responsible for them. And then it's a question of those variables. I mean, it's a crazy thing, but that's an awesome point. You can push the SOS button on your satellite locator and somebody somewhere is going to get it. But the question is, what are they going to find when they get to you in 15 hours or the next day, right? So let's say, you're out there, you're by yourself, you get this sort of gut feeling. And maybe, for me, it's when everything goes quiet. There is a deathly silence to the forest when there is a predator around that just, it's profound. Everything stops moving. Or maybe it's just a little hint of weather, or maybe it's a feeling in the air, or maybe it's this inexplicable feeling that you're being watched, or whatever it is. I've had all those things happen to me. Let's say you get that. You make the right choice, which is not to ignore it. So you take it, you internalize it, you say, okay, something's going on here. What do we do then? What's the process?
Well, I mean, it depends on, you named a couple of concerns there. Like environmentally, I mean, certainly you would have the right clothing and, heat, and you'd get out of the cold and all those things, but build a shelter, all that. But if it's predatorial, and it's some type of animal, I would say you probably need to get that weapon out, get to high ground, and prepare.
Or people, right? We should mention that too. And I've run across some
Yeah,
weird people in the wilderness, guys. I mean,
yeah,
there are a lot of people who are not out there to hunt or fish, and I don't know why they're out there, but there's some weirdos in the woods sometimes.
yeah. And I don't know the protocol. Like I don't spend any time out there. I don't know if you're supposed to help others. I don't know what y'all do out there. But I kind of treat everyone with respect and have a plan to hurt them type of a deal. And I really just want to avoid those types of folks. Say hello, check their hands, waist, surrounding area, and just get as much distance between them and myself as I possibly can, and as quickly as I possibly can. Right. And if you're dealing with like a human interaction, I'll tell you right now, a couple of things that I see time and time again is the inability to appreciate boundaries. So like, you give that example, you're out in the backcountry and you run into another type of person and you want to have a 6 foot reactional gap between you and that person, and they keep encroaching upon it, right? Like, you got a problem first, and then second is you got to tell them step back, right? And if they don't step back, then you're gonna have to make them do something. What's how it's how quick it happens. What I like to tell my audience is if they don't respect your boundary, they don't respect you, and people that don't respect you hurt you. Period. And so it could be a very, oh, hey, nice to see you out here, fishing or whatever. And that could be completely fine. And it can be completely fine, hello, and move on about your day. But if that individual, doesn't respond appropriately, meaning they don't, let's say you're cordial and they're not, then they are aggressive with their body language. They don't respect your, hey, step back, or they see you step back and they keep leaning in. Then you tell them in no uncertain terms, which, by the way, you must do if you read Gift of Fear. Gavin talks a lot about that. Tell them no. Tell them step back. Right? And then you better have a plan when they don't. Okay, so you've got jujitsu, you've got a weapon, good for you. A lot of people don't have that. They're not formidable. They don't know how to fight. They don't know how to take care of themselves. They only rely on that one thing, the boomstick. And unfortunately, in my space, I call that, a singleton and simpleton approach to the world. If that's all you got is the boomstick and that's your only plan, that literally is the summation of your personal security plan, then I would say you don't have one. Okay, because I can name 1,000 environments, and I was in one last night at 40,000 feet where you won't have the boomstick. So if that's your entire personal security plan is to pull out your Glock 19, well, I'll tell you, you don't have a good plan. You don't, because I just broke it because I put you at 40,000 feet where you don't have it. So anyway, back to the analogy you're talking about. I would tell you, yeah, you need to understand that. And you also understand, hey, brother, you might not survive. Okay, I'm going to tell you, I surf and I don't have a plan for a shark. I'm just telling you, I don't. I know that. I take that risk. I've told my wife, if I get eaten, I get eaten. It is what it is. You're in their world, okay? And that just might happen. A bear might eat you. Sorry. That's just how it is, man. And if you can't handle that, if you're like, well, I don't want to get eaten by a bear, well, then you probably shouldn't be in the backcountry. Or like in my situation, you probably shouldn't be surfing if you're afraid to get eaten by a shark.
Yeah, there's no way to get to zero risk, right? When you're doing this stuff. And
No, but hey, brother, culturally they want you to. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I can't overemphasize this point enough. Culturally, and we saw this in COVID, they want you to believe that you can live this life of 100% safety. I've got pictures I show my audiences of, like the government saying, stand here to stay safe. Well, that's bullshit. Excuse my language. All right. We know that the 6 feet for COVID was made up. Fauci said that. Okay. So we know that happened, right? They're making it up, man. So you can't stand in a spot and that's going to make you safe. But we are obsessed with that word in this culture, obsessed with be safe, be safe, be safe, be safe. Man, sometimes it's just the human experience is not safe. There are things that are inherently risky, man. And I just try to help people use common sense and be realistic.
yeah, I mean, it's about reducing the statistical chances of something bad happening, right? But they're never zero. And that's especially true if your hobby is going off and hiking around in the middle of nowhere. I mean, no matter how good you are, no matter how well prepared you are, like you said, something could just happen. And I do the same thing. I actually will have a full episode on this at some point later, but I actually carry a stack of letters in a waterproof bag in my backpack because who knows? One day they might, something could happen to me and I want to leave something there when people find me, which is morbid, but this is what we do. But what you said there about the predators, I thought was, or about people and the way that you respond to them is really interesting, because there are other types of predators too, like bears or mountain lions. I've run into them many times. And even though you're not having a conversation with them, the way that James is talking about speaking with people, I have run into weirdos out there where I have had almost this exact conversation. But it's the same thing. You need to know how to react to them. So we're going to talk about that in a later episode, but also you can go look it up. But you need to be able to read their behavior, right? And if there's a big difference between a cat that's just kind of looking at you and then wanders off, which has been most of my experiences, and a cat that is behaving in a predatory way. And the way that you respond to that is different. And to James's point, you're not going to have a lot of time to think about it. And as far as the boomstick piece goes, just to reiterate that, I do carry a gun when I hike. I know that can be controversial for some people, but I do, and I'm going to keep doing it. If you don't know how to use the gun, if you don't train on it, if you don't have the muscle memory of where it is, how to draw it, how to get it quickly, it's not going to matter. And so, sort of strapping yourself up with a pistol or whatever you're carrying and then going out there and assuming that that's all you need and you're ready to tackle whatever might come at you, probably not. Probably not. Listening to your brain is the first thing that you ought to be doing, and the gun is secondary.
Yeah, and what I'll see, and probably you've seen it, is, they'll stick that pistol in the very bottom of their backpack. You're not going to be able to get to it, right? And I see it in my world all the time when I'm talking to folks who conceal carry and they have it in a purse or a bag or, God forbid, an ankle holster. And I'm just like, it just doesn't work that way. A predator is not going to give you the ability to get it out. He's not going to say, hey, let's have a fair fight. Let me give you the time to go ahead and draw it. You need to have it carried in a way in which you practice, getting it out quickly. As we used to always teach in the FBI, how long do you have to get it out? Well, you have the rest of your life. That's what we tell people, right? That's just a fact. And so the faster you are with removing that outer garment and drawing your weapon, this is not the time to understand how that thumb brake works, or if you have a thumb brake, or if leather swells in the heat, or you should have gone with the Kydex, so it's more expensive. Like, this is not the time for any of that. You should have been practicing, right? And unfortunately, I just know from my experience of training literally thousands of gun-toting law enforcement people, they don't practice a lot. They don't. They should, but they don't, by and large. And that's really sad because it's their job. But yeah, it's not amateur hour. And if I was going out there with you, buddy, I'd have it on my hip, and because I just don't know how quick mountain lions are or bears, but I want to have something big enough to put them down, not just irritate them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've never had to use it. I hope I never do, but it's there if I need it, right? So, James, tell us a little bit about this OODA loop that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, so there was a guy named Colonel John Boyd. He was a United States Air Force fighter pilot. But, he was so much more than that. And I wouldn't say he was Sun Tzu, but I would say he's one of the most significant minds in the United States military in the last 100 years. He created not only the loop, which we'll talk about in a second, but he created the F-16, which is arguably the greatest fighter that we've ever made for air-to-air combat maneuvering. He utilized the OODA loop to teach the U.S. government and the U.S. military specifically how to kind of head fake Saddam during the first war. They brought him back. But what he learned from being a fighter pilot, and he was very quick, they called him 30-second Boyd. And what that meant was when they were up in the air and they would say fights on over the radio, meaning, okay, it's time to have an air-to-air engagement, Colonel Boyd would be able to get on his opponent's tail very quickly and, engage and win. And that's why they called him 30-second Boyd. He could do it in about 30 seconds. And they asked him one time, how is it you're so good? And he basically said, look, I observe my enemy. I observe the orientate, and then I orient my craft, meaning I move my airplane into a position where I can attack this guy. And then I make a decision, right, to use missiles or guns. And then I act. When I can do that faster than my opponent, I win. And so that's called the OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act. Now, what he says, and it's so unfortunate, what people do is they make it very simple, and they say, oh, you just OODA it. You just observe, orient, decide, act. Okay. What happens, brother, is A lot of people will do the first O. They'll observe. A lot of people. I didn't say everyone, because a lot of people aren't paying attention. They're not observing. They're not using all their senses. They're not using all of their senses because they've got earbuds in or they're looking at their phone or whatever the hell. But if you are using all of your senses and you observe, what happens, especially like in primal engagements, law enforcement shootings, tactics, and even in BJJ, right? You observe your enemy and then you orient. Well, orient is a filter. He talks about that's training and experience. Your training and experience. So all of your time on the jujitsu mat, you have seen this before. And so then you orient based on training and experience. Okay, this is what I should do. I should do a single leg. And you decide, I'm going to do a single leg. Then you act. Well, if you can do that faster than your opponent because they're still trying to, understand what you're doing, you will win. What happens, unfortunately, is if people don't have good training or they have no training or they have bad training, and then their experiences are, if I use force inappropriately, I won't do that again. There's a famous law enforcement shooting that's what happened. What happens is, and Boyd talked a lot about this, he says your orientation filter gets stuck and you can't process and you can't get to the D. So when people say his OODA loop was stuck, that's what they're talking about, right? They can't make that decision because they've never had that happen before. And so I'm a big believer in basically disrupting my enemy's OODA loop. And the way I do that and the way I teach it is I take away their vision. Okay. I use hot coffee. I use flashlights. I use fire extinguishers. I use any type of hairspray, anything I can do to hit your eyes. And what happens is you get your eyes taken away. Now you can't observe and you can't orient because you don't know where I am. So you can't make a decision. Right. And so I'm disrupting or stopping their OODA loop while mine is still spinning. And, it's a really, really important thing. You see it every day when you're practicing or training, especially in a martial art, because that's all, armed combat or mutual combat is. Like boxing is OODA loop all the time. And that's who wins is the people that have good training, good experience, and they've seen it before and they can make a decision much faster, right? A good example is like in law enforcement. If I was to, put a brand new officer in a situation where I sent a subject at that officer with a, let's say, tomahawk, that's not in the shoot, no shoot police training. They've not seen that before. So the police officer is going to start to mess with all their little trinkets, right? They're going to think about baton, pepper spray, taser, all this stuff, right? What's the bad guy doing? He's just coming. His OODA loop's spinning. I'm observing. Okay, they're not doing anything. I'm deciding to keep coming. Got the thing up. The police officer's loop will stop if they don't have any experience. And they'll not be able to understand this is a deadly force situation. They don't know it. And they're trying to understand which little trinket do I use. So their loop is stopped and the bad guy keeps coming. And the next thing you know, he impales them in the chest with it. Now, an officer who's got a lot of training and a lot of experience would say, yep, this is lethal, pull out their firearm, drop the guy. And they would win. So that's how I explain it.
I got to say, having somebody come after me with a tomahawk is, that's nightmare fuel, man. That's scary stuff. But so I think what you're really saying here, James, is that training matters, right? Repetition matters and getting that muscle memory matters so that you can start figuring this stuff out. And I will, if you want to expand on it, let's do that. But I want to throw in there that if you're just starting out doing this backcountry stuff, it doesn't make sense for you to be going out and doing super duper hardcore stuff. If you don't know how to deal with weather, if you don't know how to deal with animals, if you don't know how to deal with purifying water, whatever it might be, it's okay to start small and work your way up. It took me years to work my way up to what I'm doing now because you need to be able to see something, experience it. And, the example that James gave is a good one where if you screw up, you're dead. And that's obviously the worst consequence. But you can put yourself in situations where if you screw up, it just means that your day is over, right? It's like, oh, I forgot that thing. I have to go home. Or, oh boy, the weather got nasty. I have to go home. So there are ways to train yourself to do this so that when these situations pop up, you already have that preset in your brain. You've seen it before. You know how to react to it, and you can just sort of do it. I hate to say unconsciously because that's not entirely true. You are thinking about it, but pretty close. It becomes a programmed reaction rather than something that you have to stop and consider. So training is huge, whether you're just going out and going to the grocery store or if you're walking off into the middle of the woods. And I think that's an awesome point.
I think it's important to get a good mentor. And, if you're going to take any type of training, I mean, certainly, and I see a lot of this done improperly, but if you're going to get training in anything, I don't care what it is, well, who is this person that you're deciding to spend your time, money, and energy with? Do they actually know anything? There's a lot of people who are like cartoon characters. They're just a bunch of fluff, right? They've never done this stuff. Like, look at their background for real. Like, who have you actually ever protected, or who have you actually ever done this? Have you ever actually done this stuff? Like, for me, that's super important. It's super important that the person has credibility, that they've done it, that they have a genuine, humility about them, and they want me to get better. There's, as instructors go, there's kind of the hero, and then there's the guide, right? And no one wants the hero instructor. I don't give a shit. Sorry, excuse my language. I don't want to hear about all of your accolades, brother. I want to hear how you can help me be better. And that's what a good instructor does. They guide the student to be better. That's it. So first of all, if you're going to sign up for any type of training, boxing, BJJ, anything, actually make sure the person has, the credibility and that they want to make you better. That's a good thing. And then, for me, so much of this is don't rest on your laurels. In my space, I mean, Ross, I hear guys talk all the time about, 20 years ago, I did this, or 10 years ago, I was a Navy SEAL, or whatever. Well, as Pat McNamara likes to say, I'll kick your ass tomorrow. Okay, well, what he's saying, and I believe in that mantra, what he's saying is, look, I'm 55, but I prepare every day like I will have to fight tomorrow, because that's the fact. The body you're going to fight with is the body you got today. And I mean, I saw this in the FBI all the time where, we'd have a fit test coming up, and I'd have people say, I can't take it right now. I have to go get in shape. I'm like, what are you talking about? You should be in shape today. You're carrying that gun today. Okay. Like, you don't get the chance to go get ready. Bad guys aren't going to say, oh, okay, I'm going to let you go get ready before I take you, man. That drives me insane. So, if you can work every day to make yourself more formidable, then, I always say that, is being strong ever a weakness? I have never read an obituary where it said, the guy died because he was too strong. I've never read that, right? So, but culturally, no one makes you, but out there, it comes to be real. That's the thing, brother, is, out where you're going, I mean, just hiking up there alone, you got to be in shape, just what you were talking about at altitude, you got to be in shape. So, the beautiful thing about that is environment kind of weeds out the weak, right? Unfortunately, what we have, in domestic land is, the weak can survive until they can't, right? And then it catches up with them. But yeah, train every day, be formidable, make yourself a better version of yourself tomorrow,
I love that. And I think, as you said, there's a lot to it. So, I mean, go out, get the training and find out. What you described about instructors that don't know what they're talking about is huge in the wilderness community, because there's no governing authority, right? I mean, you got YouTube people showing you how to set up shelters. You got a guy down the street who's a survivalist. You can go watch alone on TV. And there might be good stuff there, or there might not, but being selective about what you take and what you internalize, especially if it's something that could mean the difference between living or dying, is a big deal. And then, not being weak physically. We've talked a lot about that here. I mean, you can't just being weak physically. If you can't hike anymore and you're 10 miles out and you're stuck, you're screwed. That's the end, right? If nobody's coming to get you in the weather turns, that's a bad problem. So being prepared and being formidable, I believe, is a huge part of this, and staying in shape for it's a huge part of it. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
James, let me ask you this. So just so folks are not coming away thinking, man, this is cool and it's interesting, but I don't really, how do you know when what you're feeling is genuine, primal fear and intuition that you should be listening to versus jitter? You're nervous, or you're just it's a new thing for you, or you're pushing your limits and you just need to keep going. How do you decipher that? Is there a trick to it?
Well, you got to do it. Experience helps you with it. That's for sure. Jittery is not intuition. Jittery is concern. Maybe you're curious, like I was talking about earlier about the messengers. But when it's really triggered, when it kind of starts to take over, it's an overriding sensation. You'll know it. You'll feel it. it's not one of those things where am I experiencing intuition? No, you'll know it. And your listeners, they'll know when there's been times when they've listened to it, and there's been times when they didn't, and something bad happened to them. So that's the best way I can explain it. I would say that the more you're around it, um, the more experience you get dealing with humans. Um, you know, I don't think it happens like faster or anything. I think it might help you understand, okay, this is what's going on, right? Versus maybe the first time you experience, holy shit, what is all this? This fear response that I'm getting right now. Maybe the longer you do it, the more comfortable you can become with it. I do know for a fact that people who've come from a traumatic background, they have really good understanding of intuition. They understand the warning signals. They understand their senses. There's hearing is a very big thing. Even for me, like I hear it usually before I see it. It's always been a very helpful thing for me. So I would tell people it's about your safety. I had somebody ask me, is intuition like some, Karen who's complaining about guys fishing? I said, that's not intuition. It has nothing to do with it. It's always about your personal safety. It's always about your personal safety. So intuition is not what do I order off the menu? That's just judgment. Intuition is not, um, hmm, well, relationships can be intuitive, meaning the people you hire, intuition can play into that. People you get in bed with, intuition can play into that. But by and large, it is about safety. It is about your own personal safety. I heard a client say to me one time, my dog has intuition because my dog never liked the neighbor, and turns out my neighbor was a sex offender. Well, actually, no. Your body secretes a fear response. It's a smell that dogs can pick up. It's a hormone that your body will secrete when your fear, fight or flight is basically your dogs can pick that up. That's what's happening. The dog was smelling it coming off the lady, and would put the dog. The dog would put itself between the lady and the neighbor. And she said to me, she says, my dog always thought the neighbor was bad, and my dog had intuition. No, the dog was picking up off of you. So I would tell people that if you know your safety, it feels like I'm feared for my safety. This is an intuitive response. Um, it's not the concern of being defriended on Facebook. That's not intuition. The concern of someone not liking you. That's not intuition.
When you do get the feeling, you're going to know it. I think that's good. And you got to listen to it. Because you might skate once or twice. Maybe you don't listen to it and you're okay. But one of these days, if you don't, you're going to get yourself in trouble. So that's really good advice. James, if somebody wanted to learn more about you and your work and this crazy intuition thing, where would they go?
Thanks. Yeah, I have a website. It's hamiltonsecurity.group.com. And on that page, there's information about how to engage, how to, have me come talk to your group. I have a YouTube channel. This is called Safety Seconds with James. And it's these little short 60-second vignettes about, like, what do I do on an airplane, or what do I do on a jogging trail, or what do I do, at the airport. Like all of these little things that I do in my daily life to kind of keep myself safe. I have an Instagram account. And then I'm on LinkedIn. But, that's really it. And I put out information I think is helpful to people. Don't try to scare anybody. And I like to use real world examples. But yeah, just reach out if I can help you and talk to I talk to a lot of groups, employees, college, kids going back to college, things like that, church groups, I kind of just call me and let's see. I think a lot of times, Ross, people will see my background and they go, oh, I don't want to call you. He's going to be too expensive. Well, you call me. I'm not saying I'll do it, but I can definitely help you. I'll definitely make you better than I found you type deal. So yeah.
Well, take the time to look him up. If you think that James could come help you or your group, please do think about having him come out and talk to you. And James, thank you so much for being with us today. This has been awesome.
Hey man, thanks for having me.
You bet. Thank you. There you have it. We've been talking to James Hamilton from the Hamilton Security Group. James had a lot to say about intuition and training that I think probably all of us know on some level, but it is helpful to have somebody who spent his entire life and his entire career working on this really lay it out for us. not just in the backcountry and not just in the woods, but also out in regular life, right? So I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you did too. Hope you picked up some things that will help keep you safe wherever you happen to be. And I hope that wherever you happen to be this week is fishing somewhere beautiful and catching some really awesome trout, or maybe another kind of fish, because that's cool too. So hope you guys are having a great week. Hope you enjoyed this one, and I will see you back here real soon. Till next time, this is Ross. Maybe I'll see you out there. Just remember to listen to your gut.